We are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our great panel today. I'm Joelle, Global Head of Customer Care at Aircall. You know, that cool company which just raised $65 million in the middle of COVID-19. But okay, let's get to the topic of tonight, perseverance and adaptability. Our guests are exceptional people, inspirational people. What else can we hope for in the middle of all this uncertainty? We're facing new challenges. We are developing resilience, whether we want it or not. We are being pushed. Our boundaries are being pushed. We are facing obstacles. We are overcoming obstacles. And with me tonight, Robert, Mirna, and Remi. I think their personal lives have been roller coasters. Speaking of obstacles and challenges, that's their day-to-day life. It has been for months, for years. They are specialists. They will tell us everything we need to know about persevering in life, just how good it is to push your boundaries, push yourself, do not give up, because it only gets better. It only gets stronger. So please help me welcome and give a virtual round of applause to Remi, Mirna, and Robert for today's panel.
Everybody.
Hello.
And before we kick off, thanks a lot to everyone who's been supporting the event organization. Thanks to our partners, Intercom, Support Driven, and Elevate CX. And thank you very much to my colleague Kira for the amazing organization and the opportunity she's given us to have such a wonderful time all together. So guys, before we kick off, and I have a lot of questions for you, and I suppose the audience probably will have some questions too. What I'd like to do is go around first and let you introduce yourselves, why you've decided to join the panel today, but also a bit more just about your personal lives and your journeys. Mirna, let's start with you.
Sure. Hey, everybody. It is actually afternoon here up in Vermont. It's a beautiful sunny day, so I hope you all are having the same. I am a professional ultramarathoner, which means I run races from the marathon distance and up, but I'm currently injured, but that's a whole nother story. I have a son who is 17. I was a teacher for 18 years until my life kind of exploded into this big media blitz where I wrote a book about my experiences being a fat runner who runs endurance events. And the reason I got into that was because I had a health scare in 2008 where I thought I was having a heart attack. And that prompted me to get back on the wagon of fitness, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And I started a blog called Fat Girl Running because I was a fat girl who ran and I wanted to tell my experiences. And so that got noticed by Wall Street Journal in 2015. And then the rest is history. I've been on NBC, I've been on CNN, the CW. My book is the best-selling book. Here it is. We'll talk about that later. And I am living the life of a professional athlete, a speaker, a writer, and a professional adventurer. That's where I'm sort of living in that space right now. So thank you for having me today, and I'm super excited to talk to y'all today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mirna. Robert, how about you? Can you tell us more about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. First off, thanks everyone for having me. I am dialing in from Sacramento, California today. It's going to hit over 100 degrees, so summer's here, getting outside, loving it. My story goes that 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, I was competing for Cal Rugby. If you can't see, I'm a big Cal fan. And when I was competing for them, I worked my way up to a starting position as a sophomore. No easy or common thing to do. And when competing for the national championship, which I thought was going to be the best day of my life, an opposing player put me in a headlock, hitting my chin to my chest, illegally rode me to the ground, and he broke my neck. I was on the ground, facing the dirt, couldn't move or feel anything below my neck. This incredible transformation from D1 athlete to complete quadriplegic. My doctors told me that I would not walk or move my hands for the rest of my life. They said the best outcome is that I'd be able to pick up a piece of pizza and bring it to my face. They set a vision for me that I wouldn't accept. That day, I made a decision that I would walk again, that I would return to school and be with my friends and do all these things that I used to enjoy doing. And 1,118 days later of fighting, I am walking again. I'm able to stand up out of my chair and do these things that doctors told me I would never do. I recently graduated from UC Berkeley, and I'm now embarking on this inspirational speaking career, sharing these lessons and tools that I've used to overcome quadriplegia that we can all use to overcome whatever life throws our way. So very excited to be talking about it. It's going to be fun.
Awesome.
Well, thanks a lot, Robert. And on to you, Remi.
Yeah, and sorry, Robert, I train St. Mary's rugby team. I'm not sure if you're facing them. So I hope it wasn't that team. Well,
it wasn't that team. We beat that team.
Hey, but we won a few championships in the last decade.
That's right. That's right.
My name is Remi Adeleke. I'm calling in from San Diego, California. I don't think it's 100 degrees, but it is beautiful because it never rains in Southern California. But my story goes, I was born in Nigeria. My father was a very wealthy and successful businessman. He engineered one of the first man-made islands in the world. Long story short, the Nigerian government stripped our family of absolutely everything, and my dad died days later. So we went from rich to poor. My mother, being an American, she decided that she was going to wasn't going to raise me and my brother in Africa, and she permanently relocated us to the Bronx in New York City. I ended up, growing up there and getting involved in some nefarious activity, from selling drugs and some other stuff. And then finally, I found my way into the Navy in June of 2002. And then I found my way into special operations as a Navy SEAL eventually after that. And I spent 13 years total in the Navy, and then a majority of that time in special operations as SEAL. And then I got out in January 2016. And after I got out, I found my way into, I don't even want to say I found my way into Hollywood, like Hollywood found me. And I got into acting, and then that kind of progressed into film and TV consulting. I've worked on Transformers and Six Underground, and a bunch of big films and TV shows. And then I found my way into writing. I wrote my book, which is right behind me over there, and called Transform, which chronicles my journey. And then I got into writing films and TV shows and that sort of thing. I'm adapting a book into a TV show right now. And then also I consult with pro athletes, collegiate athletes, and Olympians on neck up principles. So mental toughness, communication, leadership, that sort of thing.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for introducing yourselves. I think as for myself, I believe a number of people in the audience have done some reading, have done some background readings and search. It's just amazing to have such a panel of people for all personal reasons. You have gone through different things, and let's dive deeper. Let's really try to get inspired from all your experiences. Mirna, I'd like to start with you and the first question. What made you decide when you first decided to change, when you first decided to start running, despite everybody telling you that as a larger woman, it may not be a good idea, and you probably were not fit for that, and it wouldn't be a good idea, but you decided to do it anyway. What was that turning point? What was the moment that it just hit you that you had to go for it and there was no going back?
Well, I'm notorious for not listening to anybody and doing what it is that I want to do for myself, and what it is that I think I need to do for myself, despite what others' opinions are. And that's been a problem or a blessing I've had since I was a child. So, but when I was at that doctor, I had to see a cardiologist after I was in the ER, and the cardiologist was the one that said to me, even though I did not have a heart attack, it was a panic attack, actually. And in hindsight, of course I had a panic attack because there were all these things in my life going on, and I was not taking care of myself. So he asked me a question. He said, so how old is your son? And I said, he's 5. And then, so he goes, well, do you want to see him grow up? And how do you answer something like that? How do you oh, well, of course I would, like that, it just sounds, that's the obvious answer. And so that was the moment that was very cathartic for me. I had been a runner before. I had been a runner in high school. I was a varsity athlete in high school. I played field hockey and lacrosse. And then as I moved to Maryland, I sort of left all of that and just became the mom and the teacher and the caregiver, and I was not taking care of myself. So when that doctor said that to me, I just knew that I had to get back my life. I had to give myself back my life, and for me that meant hopping back on the treadmill, which I had just purchased a few months before. And I, having been a runner, I knew it was going to be really hard to start up again. I knew it was going to be painful and physically painful. I didn't realize how emotionally and mentally painful it was going to be to get back on and not be able to do what I had done before. But I said, this is where I'm starting. I know that I can do better, and I can't look to the past because that's not going to serve me. So I got on the treadmill, had a horrible mile time, and then I said, well, tomorrow I got to do better. And it was just a couple seconds better the next day, and a couple seconds better the next day. And so I did that for a couple of weeks and said, I'm going to keep running, even though people in my community circle, in my family circle, in my friend circle, hey, wait, why don't you just go on a diet first and lose some weight before you start running? And I was like, if my body's been carrying me this entire time, I think I'm fine. So, and I turned out to be fine. And it was a thing that gave me my life back. It forced me to prioritize myself. It forced me to move some things around in my work life and in my personal life. And that had an incredible effect on my family and on my colleagues, because I worked at a boarding school. So, they saw me, they saw the changes that were happening in me, and my students got the benefit from that. And so it was just this huge ripple effect. And so, again, I knew what I needed to do for myself. So I did it. I couldn't listen to anybody else because I really am the only one that has my interest at heart.
So listening to yourself was the key to your success in getting back to running.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Mirna. Remi, when you attempted joining the Marines and the SEAL, you didn't make it the first time around.
Yeah,
it has been quite a journey. You were challenged, and not being the best swimmer, you had trouble making the cut. Mm-hmm. You could have given up. You could have decided to do something else. What made you decide to pursue it and to just keep at it when you could have given up and look the other way? What was the motivation, and how did you manage to still stick to the plan you made for yourself?
For me, the short answer to that is I had a deep-rooted emotional reason as to why. Right. I think, so often when people pursue a goal or a job or athletics or whatever, a lot of people do it for the wrong reasons, or they have a superficial reason as to why they want to do it. Using the SEALs as an example, I want to be able to shoot cool guns or travel the world or be considered the best or X, Y, and Z. And those are all superficial reasons. And when you have that superficial reason, and the winds and the storms of life come your way, that good idea or that superficial reason is going to quickly turn into a bad idea, right? But when you have a deep-rooted emotional reason as to why you want to do something, that's going to carry you through. And so after I got kicked out of SEAL training the first time, because I made it more than halfway through. I made it through first phase. I made it through Hell Week. I made it through the toughest part of training. At this point, all I had to do was just pass my tests in dive phase and pass my evolutions in third phase, and then I was going to graduate. And so I had gotten really, really far. But, after I got kicked out, it was just like, I knew without an unequivocal doubt that I wanted to be there. I knew, and my deep-rooted emotional reason as to why I was willing to go back and go through all the torture again was one, I have nothing left. Like, I have nothing left. There's nothing left in life for me to do. I don't feel like there's a plan B. All my boats have been burned. You know, I have already stormed the beach. I committed. So that was one thing for me, was I felt like I had nothing left. And then the second thing was I had failed so much at life in the past. I had failed at being a good son. I had failed at being, you know, a good friend to so many people. I had failed at, you know, selling drugs. I had failed at music. I had failed at, you know, trying to get into the Navy and eventually getting into the Navy and getting kicked out of SEAL training. I had failed so much at life that at this point, I was just like, I'm not going to fail anymore. So those were my two deep-rooted emotional reasons as to why I was committed and I decided to go back. And I knew I would go back, and I knew that I would put in the work to make it through, because I had nothing left, and I was not going to fail anymore in life. And so again, you know, what got me through, I had a deep-rooted emotional reason why. What's going to get you through? You know, with Robert, what got him through, I'm sure he had a deep-rooted emotional reason as to why he wanted to walk again. Same with Mirna. I know she had a deep-rooted emotional reason as to why she wanted to run, right? And those are the things that carried us through. So that's what carried me through.
Thanks a lot, Remi. And I suppose this is one thing, and what advice to take away is for people to listen to emotions. It has to come from you. Mirna, backstage, we were talking about that just before the event started. It has to come from you. You have to listen to yourself. Only you know what is right for you. And that's something that I think oftentimes people don't do enough, because they don't trust their inner voice. And they will listen to people, they will listen to influences and friends and colleagues who have really lovely opinions on everything. But deep down, it needs to get back. It needs to come back to you and your instinct. So a bit of around the same topic of what tipped you and how, Robert, you realized, I mean, I cannot start to imagine what it must have felt like when the doctors, after the incident and your neck was broken, told you that in all likelihood you would never walk again. However, you somehow decided and knew, or decided to go again the prognosis. When did you realize that it would be possible despite the physical challenges? What happened during that process?
Yeah, obviously everything happened so fast. It only took 1 second for me to go from an elite athlete, you know, top of my game, to a complete quadriplegic, facing these potential realities that I might never walk again. My doctor told me that I need to go into life-threatening surgery too. I have a scar right here in my neck. I don't know if you can see it, but that's where they came in through my surgery. Important real estate right there. And he told me that I might not even survive that. The prognosis was absolutely horrific. And what really changed me was, before I went to this surgery, I called my religious advisor and I told him what happened. I asked for prayers, I asked for advice. And he said, Robert, what happened to you is really, really bad. And throughout this journey, there's going to be a lot of things that you just can't control. But the one thing that you always have complete control over is your mindset. So your positivity, your ambition, your willingness to get up every single day and fight is up to you. And nothing can take that away from you. And it was this real pivot right before my surgery. We're talking like 4 hours into this thing, that I thought, wow, you know, so many things are happening. I feel so helpless, but I always have that power to decide to get up, and I'm going to do absolutely everything possible to achieve this goal. That doctor laid out a vision for me, and it was a vision that I couldn't accept. It was a vision that I needed to fight against. And walking around doing all these things, you know, it's amazing. But if I live my entire life in a wheelchair, that's okay. But if I don't, at one point, if I look back on my life and I'm in the wheelchair and I knew that I didn't give it my all, that's not okay. That's something I can't live with. That kind of regret is something that I just can't live with. You know, my doctor said that the percentages of me walking were probably less than 1%. The odds of me being able to get out of my wheelchair and be fully independent of my wheelchair is less than 1%. What I was thinking in my mind is, so you're saying there's a chance. I mean, if there's absolutely any possibility on this earth that if I give everything in my mind, body, and soul to make this happen, I'm going to give it. I just wanted it so bad. And when you lose your ability to walk, it's what you want more than anything. So I think that's a key takeaway for everyone. I mean, when you want something in life, you have to really, really want it. You have you have to want it as much as you want to walk. And it's true, when you have that kind of desire and that kind of vision for your life, amazing things start to happen because you have that drive.
Thanks a lot, Robert. I will bounce back actually. Thank you very much, Peggy, in the audience. I was going to bring the next question, and she anticipated the very next question I was going to bring up. So you set yourself goals and you're determined to go with it, and you know where you're headed. But let's face it, it doesn't always go according to plan. So when you hit obstacles and when there are some downtimes and some doubts, can you guys share some moments where really you were on the verge of breaking out and just giving up? How did you get yourselves back together? How did you take the next step, and how did you bounce back from self-doubt or people doubting you? What were some of the strategies and tactics you used bouncing back?
Ooh.
I'd be happy to answer that question. So it was in the first 6 weeks of my injury that I had absolutely no return or recovery. Everything I was doing wasn't showing any kind of progress. And in the beginning of my injury, I wanted to walk for myself. It was a selfish desire that I had. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to have selfish desires in your life, to want to walk for yourself. That's not a bad thing. But when my injury started getting out there, it went pretty public. A lot of people heard about it, and a lot of people reached out. And there was one person in particular that really struck me. I was on my phone, scrolling through, and this person reached out. She said, "Robert, you don't know me, and I don't really know you, but I want to let you know how much your story and your fight has changed my life. I've been in an abusive relationship the last 3 years, and it was getting really bad. I wasn't doing anything about it. And I saw your story and your faith and your perseverance, and I got help, and you saved my life." Now I'm reading this thing, tears in my eyes, thinking, this isn't even about me anymore. Getting up, walking, fighting, doing all these things, it's not about me. It's about them. That gift to give something to someone, that gift to inspire someone, that's something that lasts forever. I started living a life for others. A life in service to others is a life driven by purpose. When I don't feel like getting up for myself, when I say, man, this 2.5 hour workout's gonna kick my butt, I don't want to do this. Well, I have to do it because I made a commitment to them. And this is the biggest commitment I've ever made in my life. So when things get tough, when I think, man, I just can't do this, I do it for them. I do it for other people. I think that's really important for us to have in our lives, is that our goal is oriented around helping someone else.
Wow. Thanks a lot, Robert.
Yeah.
Remi and Mirna, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I'm very similar in that respect, because in addition to having started out the journey for myself, I very quickly realized that people were watching. In my position as a teacher, I have kids watching me. I have my colleagues watching me. I have my son watching me as a parent. And even my husband, he's watching. Maybe I can try to run too. And actually that's how we met, but that's a different story. For example, I was doing the LA Marathon a couple of weeks ago before everything started shutting down. And it was my worst marathon time. It was painful because I'm still injured right now, and just being injured is very painful because this is supposed to be my job, and not being able to do it is having its toll on me emotionally. But every time I have a moment of self-doubt and that, why am I doing this? This is super hard. This is painful. This is really painful, and I'm choosing to do this. But I know that people are watching. I do it for myself, but I know that people are watching. They're watching this chubby lady just move her way down the street, maybe with a grimace on her face, maybe with a smile, maybe talking to herself, because very often I have to sort of invoke the names of my of my predecessors, my grandma, my aunts and uncles who have passed on, or the people who are alive but don't have the mobility that I do, and they don't have the means to move like I do, and to utilize my body as it was intended to be used. And so I do it for them, and I do it so that other people who may be in a similar situation or not, and need to see somebody that does not fit a particular stereotype of what an athlete looks like, and they need to see me out there, I do it for them. And then that feeds me personally. And so like, I just want to keep doing it so people know they have a representation in their minds that, oh, maybe I can do that too. Maybe I can't do a marathon right now. Maybe I can't do an ultra marathon, but maybe I can try to run my first mile in 20 years. Maybe I can try to walk around the block because I haven't been able to do that for a long time. Maybe I can put a bathing suit on and go for a swim in the pool. And just kind of shut out all the noise, shut out all the negativity, and just do what I need to do for myself and for my community.
Very well.
Yeah, and for me, it's how I push through when it comes to situations of suffering is I think about the suffering that I've gone through in the past. Right? We've all lived. Life is hard. I think we would all admit that life is extremely hard, and if we're smart, and the greatest lessons we learn is through pain, setbacks, failure, and suffering, right? Because it's like we as human beings, like it's one thing to sit in a classroom, right? And it's another thing to be slapped in the head, with a hammer, right? That's another thing, right? And so like for me, I've gone through so many hardships, setbacks and pain in my life that those are my reference points. Those are my reference points. So when I find myself in a challenging situation, I'm able to look back and say, you know what? I went through worse. I went through SEAL training, or, I went through a tough time in my marriage years ago, or, I went through this health issue years ago. I can get through this. So I kind of use, my past suffering as a reference point to get through things that I might be going through today. And then, just to add on to that, I also like to look at other people because, there's always somebody in this world that has it worse than you, right? There's always somebody going through worse than you. And it's so easy to be so sucked into self and to be deceived into believing that we are the only one on this planet with this problem or going through this trial. When the reality is we are not, especially living in America, right? There's so many people outside of America. I've been all over the world in third world countries that are going through way worse than we will ever be going through, right? And so I say all of that to say, use your past suffering and pain and setbacks as a reference point when you find yourself in a challenging situation and say, you know what, I got through that loop. Because I got through that, I could get through this. And then look at others, and say, you know what, that person is going through this level of suffering, and I'll just be a bit transparent. Like right now, my wife is going through a very, I don't want to use the word traumatic, but she's going through a pretty bad situation. She has an autoimmune disease in her colon. And she has bacteria in her colon, which can lead to colon cancer. However, she can't really do the hard treatments for it because she's 5 months pregnant. And so she's in this situation where, if I do the treatment, I can harm the baby. But if I don't do the treatment, I could get colon cancer in the future, or in the next few months. And so that's a challenging situation for her. And, what I tell her all the time is that, babe, you had autoimmune disease before, you've gone through worse before, we'll get through this. Collectively, we've gone through worse before, we can get through this. So again, just looking at other people's suffering and using that as a reference point and using your own suffering as a reference point.
And if I could follow up on what Remi just said there, I would love to, because that's something I talk about all the time too, is like the power of perspective and how perspective goes both ways. Because you can absolutely also use a reference point as when times were really great, right? You can also use a reference point of people who are doing awesome. But you also have that choice to choose, like just exactly what you just said, the low reference points, where you're struggling and you're fighting, but you made it through it. And the things that others go through, the millions of people in this world that would give anything to be in our situation. It's a saying I use all the time, and that saying is compared to what? It's when things are tough, like with this pandemic right now. Let's talk about the obvious. My graduation experience wasn't what I expected, but compared to what? I have to sit at home all the time. And compared to what? I'm dealing with this uncertainty. Well, compared to what? And when you start putting your challenges in perspective of what you've gone through and what others have gone through, you start realizing that what you do, it's overcomable. And these challenges, you can achieve what you want to achieve.
But bouncing back on that, how do you, given the current circumstances of the pandemic and everything everyone around us and ourselves are experiencing, how do your journeys, your personal journeys and everything you overcame already help you in empowering others? How can you help them relate to your experience or to their own emotions to really actually take a step forward and just be as brave and persevering and adaptable as you have been in the past? Do you have examples of people or situations where your personal journey has really made a difference as well in other people's lives? And how do you go about not just sharing the experience but making it personal to them so they can really take a step for themselves?
That's a great question.
Wow.
There must be a question. Can I start? Sure. Okay. So a couple of years ago, I was out on a run when I used to live in Georgia, and I was a 6-miler, and I encountered a parent of a student of mine. Who's one of my favorite students, and she's a big tennis player and a big horseback rider, and very, very thin, very tall. And so she walks. I'm running towards her, and she stops. We talk, and she goes, how do you do all this running? And I'm like, I just love it. I don't know. I just love being out for hours and hours. And then she goes, your body must have been made for this. And I was like, no one has ever said that to me before. And so like when I think of this whole situation that we're in as something that we were all made for. Some of us don't know it yet, but we have skills, especially as professional people, we have skills that we can share. We have talents that we can share. It's about being in the right mindset. And we, again, as Robert said, we have the ability to control that mindset, right? And so as everyone was traumatized, and people are still traumatized from losing work, from losing community, from not being able to see our loved ones. But on the other hand, we have the gift of time. Even if we're still working from our home, but we are home. Lots of us say, we don't have time. We never have time to see our families. We never have time to spend with the kids. And so now we have time. We just have to recognize that and acknowledge that we have the time to do that. And so like for me personally in my own business, it is time for me to rest. It is time for me to finally pivot my social media to make it so inspirational and motivational, and especially right now because there's so much negativity, especially this week, and last week and the week before that. And it's really a great time for me to focus into what I call radically reprioritize my life, my work life, my personal life, my sports life, my leisure life. What is important to me now? That is the question that I ask myself every single day. So when you're thinking about your business, you're thinking about, your family, what is important? It's important for me to spend time with my 17-year-old son, even though he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But I make them. It is important for me to formulate a new course on diversity and inclusion because people need it and I have the skills. It is important for me to continue to go out and be on the trails and show people that you can do this too, that you also have access to this. And so I've been able to, again, pivot to purpose and to share that with people, to share that with my family, share that with people that I work with professionally. And, I'm extraordinarily grateful for this gift while also holding space for those all who have been affected, in a health-wise, economically,
food-wise, everything that people are suffering now. But I'm also, just kind of holding the sanctity of what we have been given as gifts.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, I've learned a long time ago that it's so easy to find a curse and a blessing. It's easier to find a curse and a blessing than it is to find a blessing and a curse, right? And and just to kind of add some context to that, when I got out of the military in 2000, my dream job, was to be a Navy SEAL, right? And so I got to do that. And one of the reasons why, the main reason why I got out of the military in 2016 was because of my two sons. I had two sons who, I wanted to be around, because as a SEAL, you're just gone so much. And having my father die at 5 years old, and my oldest was 2 at the time, and my youngest was 1 at the time, I was just like, I need to be home. And after I got out, January, February, March, to me just seemed like such a curse, because it was just like I was trying to find my purpose, and I didn't feel like I was finding my purpose, and just, the job that I thought I was going to be doing, I wasn't doing. And I just remember griping and just being so upset about, why did I get out? Why did I make this decision? I was a fool. I should have stayed in. I was having a great time. And then, May of 2016 came around, and I got a phone call one day to ask to be in a Transformers movie. Like, no acting experience, no acting background. They were just looking for somebody with my background to be in this film and to consult on the film. And the blessing in what I perceived to be a curse was I was available. I was available to be able to do that. And how that translates to this current pandemic now is the same. There are so many blessings in this curse. And just personally, a personal example of mine is my 2 kids now. It's funny, I use my 2 kids as an example early part of the story, and I'll use them now. My oldest son, we had him in private school. He was in private school, and we were spending all this money on private school, and he was struggling. So much so that the teacher said, we're going to probably have to hold him back. And the COVID hits, and we're having a homeschool, and he's my son, so I understand his love language, right? I understand, I get him. He's exactly like me. So I know that, he needs repetition, because that's the way I learn. I learn through repetition. He needs, things to be a bit more structured. He needs one-on-one attention. And as I began to homeschool my son, he began to thrive. To the point where, we were handing in assignments to his teachers, and they were just like, wow, this is Caden. I was like, yeah, this is him. He's reading, he's doing this. But again, the blessing was I was able in this pandemic to give him time that I wouldn't have been able to give him if there wasn't a pandemic, because I've been so busy, right? And now me and my wife decided we're not putting him back in private school. We're just going to homeschool him moving forward, because we found that that's the best way he learns. And there are so many other, blessings that, to me, I've been able to find. You have to really search for the blessings within the curses. And if you really search, you'll see that there are so many blessings. And there are some that we probably won't even be evinced to until the day we die, right? Like, maybe if there wasn't COVID, you'd have gotten in the car, drove down the street, and got in a car accident and died or something. Like, there's so many things that that this COVID thing has protected us from and has given us. I've been more busy than ever in this season, and I lost $45,000 worth of work when this hit. And to think that I'm even more, again, find the blessing in the curse. Search, you have to be intentional about it. You can't just be like, well, I don't see anything. You have to really be intentional about finding the blessings, and you will.
Remi, I have to say that as a former educator of 18 years at private schools, which I loved, I also decided to take my kid out of school before COVID hit. And before we were grounded, we were traveling all year. And I was like, this is how my kid needs to learn.
Yes.
He needs to direct his own learning.
Yes.
With a little bit of input from me, the professional, but he just started to flourish. So yes. I get it. I see you, and I'm so happy that is working out for y'all.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, guys, as you know, there is quite a large fraction of people in the audience who deal with customers, whether face to face, or on the phone, over email. Dealing with customers is not always easy. You get your feelings hurt. We shouldn't be taking it personally, but it's what you do. You get your feelings hurt. You get angry. You get frustrated. It's only normal. It's only human. Robert, a question for you is, somebody broke your neck. Somebody made the decision, if not maybe completely intentional, but broke your neck. And you have every reason on earth to be angry for the rest of your life for somebody taking away your rugby career and for so much happening to you and really, it's a life-changing decision that the person made that day on the field. However, reading about you and talking to you, you decided and made the decision not to be angry at that person, knowing what's at stake and not getting angry at that person. How did you manage to overcome the anger when really you had every reason to be angry? Can you tell us a bit more about how you went around your anger and just bounced back in the most amazing positive way?
Yeah, absolutely. This is another one of the biggest turning points of my story, because like you said, what happened to me, it was not an accident. It was because of the actions that another person took that I broke my neck, and I've been fighting for my life every day since that happened. You can bet. Now, when I saw videos of someone wrenching me down by the neck, watching my vertebrae snap, I wanted to be angry. I wanted to hate that person. I wanted that person to hurt like I've hurt. But I realized that the more I focused on him, the more I focused on all these uncontrollables in my life, right? All the things that I just couldn't do anything about, the more power I gave to the things that were bringing me down, and the less power I was giving to myself. I think there's two categories we can put this in. There's uncontrollables and controllables. And we have this limited capacity of things that we can focus on. So the more we decide to focus on the things we can't control, like the more, for me, focusing on the person who broke my neck, the more we focus on the things that we aren't liking the way that things are going on in our lives, the less that we can focus on the things we can actually do something about, the less we can focus on the things that are going to make us better. So that person, the guy who broke my neck, he's never reached out to me. He's never said he's sorry, but I forgive him whether he's sorry or not, because whether he reaches out to me or not doesn't really change anything. My neck's broken and I have to deal with the situation. I have no choice but to deal with this situation. This is my reality right now, and I can't deny that if I want to get to my goal. I realized that the more power I gave to him and the more I hated that person, the less power I gave to myself. And I think that's true for everyone. All these negative conversations, all these negative interactions we have, you just can't give power to it. You have to focus on the things that you can do, the things that you do have, because that list is long. That list is a lot longer than the things that we don't have, and it helps you get better.
Yeah,
I think.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Remi, please.
I was gonna say one thing that I learned is big time is, forgiveness is so often we think forgiveness is for the other person at times, and I've just found in my life, and I'm not sure how true this is for others, but that forgiveness at times is more for me. Because if I don't forgive that person, then it's just going to eat at me. I'm going to become bitter. I'm going to wake up angry. I'm going to wake up thinking about that person and thinking about how I want to get that person back. And it's just going to gradually destroy and eat at me. Mm-hmm. So as you said, you're giving that person power. They're still punching you. They still have their arm around your neck proverbially when you don't forgive. But when you do forgive and you release it, that's when what they did has been released, and you can move forward and heal. That's something I've just learned so much about. Forgiveness is not always for the other person. I'm going to forgive you. Forgiveness, you need to forgive them for you. Otherwise, it can destroy you.
Agreed. Thanks a lot. Mirna, a question from Michael from the audience, and to all of you really. But you guys have really high standards for yourself. You keep pushing. How do you bounce back, and how do you continue once you have reached your goal? But I suppose there are many of them. But what brings you to the next one, and what do you do when you achieve the goal you set for yourself?
That's a great question. I I have, as you said, Joelle, I have lots of goals, and I'm sure that all of us on this panel do. Lots of different goals for different areas of my life. But as an ultra runner, I have some pretty big goals that I have not reached yet. And so, but I've got smaller goals that I have. And so I always try to make sure I'm somebody that is sometimes motivated by goals. And my overarching goal is to have long-term health and wellness, and to, you know, be able to run when I'm 92 or 95, like those little ladies that you see in the Times, you know? And I want to be able to do that. And if I'm not able to do that, I also which I think is really important in terms of your goals, reaching your goals, is being able to manage your expectations or adjust your expectations, because sometimes you don't reach them. And there are many times in my life as a runner where I am invited to a big, huge event and I fail very publicly. And it hurts and it's awful. But then when I remember what my actual goal is, you know, my goal, you know, one of the goals was to finish the race, but my overarching goal is to have long-term health and wellness. And so did I put miles in the bank for that? Yes, I did. And so that's how I keep moving through life. You know, I have that overarching goal, but I have touch point goals, the smaller goals that help me realize that larger goal. So I don't think I'm ever going to run out of goals, because that would mean that I have died. So, so I mean that's how I try to frame it anyway.
Robert and Remi, any thoughts on the topic of goals? And then already, and time just flies, we'll have to wrap up with a final question. I know it just went by so quickly.
Is that?
Yeah, on the topic of goals, one thing that I think is really, really important is that we set these goals, right? And we think that when we get there, everything's just going to be absolutely amazing, right? And one of my biggest goal has been to walk again. And it was about 8 months into rehab, 8 to 9 hours a day, that I was finally able to stand up in my walker with no straps or harnesses and take my first step. And now you can think that when this happened, I mean, it would just be like life made, right? I won the lottery. Well, I did that and it felt great. But then the next day I did it again and I did it again. And I started realizing like, wow, this is hard, you know? And think about it in your lives. You know, let's say you get the promotion, you know, you worked really hard for that and you always had your eye on that prize and then you made it. And then you realize, I just got more work, you know? I think it's really important to realize that we should be happy right now. Whether I'm walking or not, you know, whether you can be out and about and see your friends or not, it's really important to be happy right now. While you're working towards that goal, really appreciate what you have in this moment, because nothing's guaranteed in the future. And we all realize that. The plans we've made, a lot of them got derailed. And I think we should realize that even in this pandemic, maybe we can appreciate just being in this moment right now and not wait till we achieve something before we allow ourselves to be happy.
And then I'll just be really, really quick because I know we're over time as it relates to goals. Set incremental goals. You know, we have a saying in the SEAL teams, eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? And that's how you eat an elephant, right? Because so often we set these huge goals and we don't achieve that huge goal and then we shut down, right? And just to kind of get some more context in SEAL training, there's an evolution called Hell Week, and Hell Week is 6 days. It starts on Sunday and it ends on Friday. And the instructors throw everything at us those first 2-3 days. I mean, they throw everything at us. And you only get 2 hours of sleep on Wednesday, 2 hours of sleep on Thursday. So they keeping you awake. And most of the guys who quit, they quit on Sunday night or Monday morning. And why is that? Because what the instructors do is they keep saying, this just started and now you got 6 days of this. You can't even get through the first hour and this is so horrible. And all the guys keep thinking about is, I got to go through this till Friday. I got to go through this till Friday. I got to go through this till Friday. And they shut down and they quit. Mm-hmm. Versus guys like me, I set incremental goals. My goal was not to get to Friday. My goal was to get to the next evolution. And then once I get to the next evolution, then get to the next evolution. And once I get to that, I really get to mid-rats. Then once I get to mid-rats, get to the next evolution. Then from there, breakfast. You know, I set up these small goals. And as I achieved those small goals, my confidence boosted. right? Because it's like, oh, I achieved that goal, and then I got to the next one, and I achieved that goal, and my confidence boosted even more so. So set incremental goals. Eat the elephant one bite at a time, and don't just set this massive goal that you realistically can't, achieve in one bite, because you're just gonna, self-defeat,
So one final question, and I'll actually tie in two questions in one. The one I was going to ask, and one from the audience as well. I was going to ask you your advice to the audience tonight on the back of everything we shared: stories, hurdles, obstacles, challenges. What is your advice to the audience? But also, what is the best advice you ever received when it comes to persevering and being adaptable? Robert, let's start with you.
Yeah. Best piece of advice I ever received. I was on a religious pilgrimage, and this is something I talked about earlier. And this priest told me, when things get tough, ask yourself, compared to what? And that really helped me every single time. When I think, man, what I'm doing is just so impossible. I say, compared to what? And it's just immediate mindset shift that what I'm doing is absolutely overcomable. And then a piece of advice that I give to other people: you can't control what happens to you, but you can choose to control how you interpret it. No matter what happens to you, you can't change your circumstance, but you can change your interpretation. You can view it as a curse, or you can view it as a blessing, just like Remi said. I hope that when adversity strikes, people are able to see the positives and change their interpretation of that circumstance.
Thank you very much, Robert. Mirna, your best piece of advice?
Sure. They're both the same things. I love the book by Diana Nyad called Find a Way. And in it, she talks about, trying to from Florida to Cuba, and she tries 5 or 6 times. And so I really love the idea of trying to always find a way over an obstacle, through the obstacle, under the obstacle, around the obstacle, or just crashing through with all your might. And I think, and I love that sentiment of doing everything that I need to do to move along, to keep it moving, and to not get stuck. So I give that to you today.
Thank you, Mirna. And last but not least, Remi, for the final words.
Yeah, a failure is only a failure if you don't learn from it. If you learn from it, it's a lesson. That's a piece of advice that I kind of gave myself after failing so much at life, and just trying to figure out a way to move forward and not give up. And it was just looking at my failure first, taking responsibility for my failure or my mistake. Right? That's because if you can't take responsibility for it, you're not going to recognize it. And then after you take responsibility, searching for the lesson in it, and then using that lesson for your success to propel you into success for your future successes. And so again, a failure is not a failure. A failure is only a failure if you don't learn from it. If you learn from it, it's a lesson. And if you take that lesson can lead to your ultimate success.
Guys, thank you so much. It has been an honor, a privilege to be interacting with you today. I hope the audience enjoyed it just as much as I did. Thank you for being so open, so transparent, and sharing so many of your experiences, and not necessarily the easiest experiences in life, really. Thank you for taking the time. Be well, be safe. We're not done. The event continues. We will take a break. There will be a networking break session of 10 minutes, as well as the expo. And we will be breaking out into 3 different breakout sessions. There will be a customer breakout session, which will be hosted by Sarah Hatter, and she'll be telling you more or exchanging with you and discussing the difficult interactions you may sometimes have with customers, and how to manage the emotional growth within support teams in particular. Scott and Robert, you will be moderating a session on self. And it's basically again about a lot of personal journeys, but giving people space to actually really reflect on their personal journeys and discuss the takeaways from the panel discussion. And I had the privilege to be moderating a leadership session with Bobby,
and we'll be discussing what leaders and managers are going through in the current circumstances, all the challenges, especially within the pandemic situation. So we're off for a networking break. Thank you very, very much. It's been a real pleasure, and we hope to get with you again in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, top breakout takeaways. Bobby, can we talk about yours? I didn't get to engage with you too much on this session, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of being with Joelle and just talking through leadership during a global pandemic and what that means for adaptability and perseverance. And yeah, I loved, we covered a lot of ground, but one of the big takeaways we discussed was just really using this time as a moment for personal growth, using this time as a catalyst for change. We heard from Caitlin, who talked about how her team, they threw their support previous model out the window and are now trying a new phone support strategy and how it's had a really positive impact. And so just a great share and a great example of yes, things are really hard right now, but at the same time, it's a rare opportunity for us to grow and develop our own leadership, to work and challenge and develop our teams, shake up the business if we need to, things that would normally take a lot of time, have a lot of resistance, and yeah, really kind of making the most of it. So, Joelle, anything?
Well, actually, what I would like to share is the fact that it was really, really nice to be co-hosting the breakout session with you, Bobby. I think it was really it's important. It's really spontaneous. It was really spontaneous and relaxing. I agree with you. I think the one that I enjoyed most is how Caitlin was really creative with her teams and deciding not to pick up calls and to turn off the line as a support leader. I find that brilliant, to be that creative and that bold and showing a customer a completely different way of doing things, offering better service and allowing people to cool off, call in angry, leave an angry message,
right.
Call back later, 10 minutes, they cool down and you solved half your problem because they're ready to listen. And they didn't even have the need to shout at you because they just had the time to take a deep breath. So I think in a lot of the times, I think we need to remind ourselves of that is just chill, just take a deep breath. Is what you're about to say really what you mean to say? Right. Can it wait a minute, 20 seconds, 10 minutes, or maybe the night, just sleep on it and try to just, especially as a leader, as a manager, to take a step back because what you do and what you say has an impact on team members. And once it's said, you cannot take it back. Their words, right. They have an impact. Words are powerful. So I think that's the lesson really, is to try and remain as calm as possible, given the circumstances. It is a challenge, but I think what we learn as well, and I mean, if you had told me 3 months ago that we would be here today and having that discussion, I wouldn't have believed it. And I think for myself and my teams, I think we have come a very long way in the past couple of weeks. We can be quiet in living through that situation, not just as collaborators, but as human beings, and being able to share that tonight with all of you is just splendid.
Yeah, we had a really great conversation in our session too about the idea of how burnout is really starting to creep up more and more and more on teams because we're customer facing teams and we're all in the line of fire for people who are angry and enraged and frustrated and there's tension and you just happen to be the outlet for them right now. Even if you didn't cause the frustration or tension, you're there. And it's a manager's job and it's a leader's job to really model self-care behavior to teams to prevent that churn, prevent that burnout. And some of the stuff that we talked about too is like Peggy had this, talked about small accomplishments and small praises and throwing these big goals that we all set in January that are never going to happen now kind of out the window and allowing for people to have small victories in their day, pulling people off the queue if you need to, enforcing special projects at the risk of, your KPIs tanking for a month. Sometimes that might happen. But I think that this is a perfect time for that to happen because it's really showing a concern for your team, a concern for their mental health and mental wellness. But also, like we talked about, the idea of how one-on-ones have shifted for teams, because so many people are coming into their one-on-ones with a manager and they don't have, I accomplished this great project, or look at my response time is up, or it's really just flopping on the couch and taking a big deep breath. Sometimes that's what they need at that time. And our job as leaders, people leaders working in CX, is to let them have that. So, you know, when your leader says we're going to experiment and we're going to do things differently and we're going to do whatever it takes to, you know, keep helping our customers, but put our team first and their wellness first, I think that shows a really strong mindset, a really strong leadership mindset.
I had the privilege of moderating with Robert on the self session track, and I think one of the big takeaways from our session was this concept of a mental diet, where it pays to be mindful of the things that we're taking in mentally, right, and how that influences us, impacts us, right? Because it's not something that it's not something that we're taught. It's not something that we think about a lot, right? But it's the positives and the negatives, right, can all kind of influence our day and just how we go through our lives. And just taking a moment to think about that makes a huge difference, right? Robert also shared his experience with a gratitude journal, and that's an example of kind of positive elements being added to his mental diet, right? And so I think that's something that we can all benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something that I think was probably most beneficial from the session was that topic of a mental diet. I think if I were to ask anyone here in this call, what's your mental diet? Nobody can really answer that question. I wasn't able to for a long time. It's not something that we think about. With the physical diet, it's nasty in, nasty out, or if you eat well, you would perform well. I think the same goes with our mind. We can't give what we don't have. Trying to impart positivity on someone, you yourself have to be a positive person. And to make sure that any negative interaction doesn't affect you, and to avoid making decisions that you might regret or acting in a way that is negative and you might regret, it's important to have that intentional audit. What's the things that I'm doing every single day to have a better mental diet? Looking up inspiring stories, having a gratitude journal, like I said, write 3 things when you get up and when you go to bed on things that I'm grateful for. Misha had a great example. She's like, my morning coffee and hearing the birds chirping, something as small as that. Living in that state of gratitude and filling yourself with positivity, it in turn makes you feel more positive, and helps you give that to others.
One of the best pieces of advice I was ever told years and years and years ago was that gratitude gives back. Gratitude, when you vocalize it, when you write it down, when you share it with others, it always kind of comes back to you. And I think that's so important to kind of keep in perspective. Like we talked about in our panel, yes, customers it's hard to deal with, but we have a job. Our company's still here. We still have an opportunity to answer emails, even if they're tough and people are bonkers, right? Like I'm still here with this team who's still helping me through it. So you're right, like small chances for us to be grateful for whatever's happening in the moment, having mindfulness about what we can be grateful for in the moment. I don't think anything can be too small to be grateful for,
Yeah.
Well, guys, it sounds like we have a topic for our next discussion. We can on a new panel on just mental diet. Speaking of gratitude, my gratitude goes out to all of you. It's been a really neat experience today, and sharing those moments with you. We're going to have to wrap up. Again, thank you to each and every one of you for making this a really nice event, very great panel, some really cool breakout sessions. To the audience, I hope you enjoyed the time with us as much as we did with you. Thank you very much, and I certainly hope we will cross paths again in the near future. Have a lovely rest of the day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.